Alrighty, so the US versus Dominican Republic game have just finished, and in the end, the US does get the 4-0 win over Dominican Republic in this Olympic qualifier. And although it sounds like a convincing win for the US getting a what you expect, a comfortable victory against the Dominican Republic, if you actually saw the full game, you would know that this was anything but comfortable, and at least for the first 60 minutes, yeah, it was a very infuriating performance by this U.S. Olympic qualifier team, and I'm pretty sure everybody had a lot of concern and even doubts that this team probably is not going to make it out of the group or even get into the semifinal and potentially win that semifinal to qualify through the Olympics. Now, the U.S. did make 6 changes coming into this game. Jason Christ decided to switch up his lineup and actually switch up the goalkeeper with David Ochoa not playing in this game and JT Marcinkowski coming into this one. Then you got Mauricio Pineda, Aaron Herrera, Georgi Mihailovic, Hassani Dotson, and Benji Michel all out in the starting 11 with Mark Sinkowski, Kessler, Araujo, Bofo Salcedo, Pereira, and Johnny coming in the starting 11 in this game. And there are a couple of guys that actually did eventually come off the bench of the guys that I mentioned that was not in the starting 11 in this game but was in the starting 11 in that game against Costa Rica. Now, in the first half, it was a slow start for the U.S. on the attack in the first 15 minutes, and this would be kind of a trend throughout the entire first half where the U.S. just looked really sloppy going forward on the attack. And once again, I think this is the second game in a row where the attack and especially the midfield look very disjointed with this U.S. Olympic qualifier team. And I thought early on, Dominican Republic, in some way, I would say they were kind of the better team early with them having a couple of good moments on the attack. I thought Dominican Republic looked very strong whenever they go through the transition, but I guess that mainly to do to the fact that the U.S. started to kind of push men forward, and when you decided to push more men forward and leave only a couple of center backs at the back and leave only like potentially a one-on-one situation when Dominican Republic does go on the transition, yeah, that's when it kind of explains why Dominican Republic look very good whenever they go on the transition. Now, in the 24th minute, the U.S. finally get their first shot on goal after Jackson Yu's 16-yard shot hits it straight to Guzman, the Dominican Republic goalkeeper. I think this one was coming off the corner, and throughout these two games, I kind of feel like the U.S. has been working on their set piece and especially their taking corners a lot, because there's been times where I have seen them do some tricky plays and that there's been times they kind of take some unorthodox kind of free kick and a corner, and this was one of them where they basically pass it right to the middle to Jackson Yu. And I know Jackson Yu is not known for his goal scoring ability, but I feel like he should have done better in terms of this one. I mean, he was wide open in the 16-yard box, and unfortunately just did not get a lot of power into that one, and Guzman, the goalkeeper, easily catch that for his first save of the game. Then Guzman then had to make his first real save of the game in the 27th minute when Johnny, who had a free header in the box, but unfortunately, again, not a lot of power into that header, and Guzman was able to palm that one away. But really, that was kind of the first real opportunity that the U.S. had, and you're thinking maybe the U.S. started to show a little bit more intensity, and maybe this is where the U.S. attack is going to get going. No. Unfortunately, the U.S., after kind of that little good spell of period between the 20th and 30th minute, they basically gone back to that snail pace, and that the midfield was just playing too many sideway passes and too many short passes, and it was kind of infuriating of the fact that we know Dominican Republic is going to just sit back, so why are they just keep playing these short passes and playing these sideway passes that is clearly not going to help pressure this Dominican Republic defense? I mean, this Dominican Republic defense are pretty much saying, well, you're playing these short passes and sideway passes, and we're just going to sit back and we're going to happy to do so, as long as you don't, of course, trying to play some risky pass and play it over the top. And again, this is just something that I just don't understand why the U.S. did not do in the first half, and especially that midfield where not only, as I mentioned, it was very disjointed between them and also the attacker and the striker in the game, but they weren't really putting some risky pass and pretty much playing behind this Dominican Republic defense. And I also think that maybe the reason why that midfield wasn't able to do that was that when I did kind of look at the starting 11 again at halftime, I realized that there was free number 6 in the midfield for Jason Christ's team. And I know for when you look at this roster, there is definitely a lot of number 6 player on this roster, and this kind of also goes back to what I said earlier when the roster was announced of where the goals exactly is coming in. When I look at the striker department and how there's not really a lot of those guys that is the number 9 for this roster is going to be the one that I'm confident that they can bang in the goal. But now I'm kind of also having the concern of when I look at this midfield alone, since we have just so many defensive midfielder and a lot of these guys are not known to create chances for their team, you just wonder where's the creativity going to go with this team. And this is going to, I think, continue to be a thing for the US. And I know eventually at the end they kind of turn it on a little bit, which I'll get to that a little bit later in this review of why exactly they did that. But there's definitely going to be now a lot of concern heading into future Olympic qualifying game of asking the question, does this team have enough creativity, especially in the midfield, and is someone in that midfield spot and all those number 6 on that roster, is there going to be one specific guy that is able to step in and able to provide some creativity in that US midfield? Now, going back to this, I also said that I expect there's going to be sub in the midfield at halftime, because clearly the midfield just what, look at how they perform in the first half. They were definitely not performing the way that I was hoping for them to do. But right before halftime, the US did kind of press a little bit. Sam Vines actually had an ambitious volley that, I thought that one was probably going to be one that just going to went way wide with the way that he kind of hit that one from about 20 yards out. But that one actually came very close from hitting the left side of the post and almost give the US a 1-0 lead in a game where I don't really think they deserve a 1-0 lead with the way that they kind of played throughout the first half. Now, in the second half, the US did make a sub with Soto coming in from Jesus Ferreira, which, that was kind of odd that Jason Christ decided to use that as the first sub. I mean, I know Jesus Ferreira was very quiet in this game, but a lot of that has to do with he just got no service from this midfield, because this midfield wasn't doing much to provide the ball to the striker to get into good position to score the goals. There was a low end-to-end action 5 minutes into the second half. Bofo Salcedo just hits it wide for about 12 yards out, but you can start to see the build-up start to get a little bit better, but still, the final ball and finishing is still a little bit of a problem with this team. Then the 59th minute, Johnny, of course hits the post as the US came close to potentially getting the opening goal. But on that same sequence, Jackson Yule scored from Bofo Salcedo to give the US a 1-0 lead. And as soon as that goal went in, not only the fact that has to be a huge sigh of relief with a lot of these US fans, but you just kind of knew that, yeah, as soon as the US are able to get that opening goal, the floodgates are probably going to open and they are going to get some more confident. And also, I think after when the US did get that opening goal, they did Jason Christ did started to sub in a couple of midfielders that play in that Costa Rica game. I think Hassani Dotson and Georgi Mihailovic both came in during that point, and they would play a big part of why the floodgates would start to open for the US, because 11 minutes later, Hassani Dotson scored from Georgi Mihailovic to make it 2-0 in favor of the US. Unfortunately, that was not a banger that Hassani Dotson scored, so that probably disappointed a couple of Minnesota fans, knowing the fact that Hassani Dotson only scores banger, but that still was a decent goal from Dotson, and also a decent ball from Mihailovic to basically pass to Dotson, who able to put that one away to give the US a 2-0 lead. And I also said the midfield subs really worked to a beauty, and that, I know Jason Christ is still going to receive a lot of criticism after this game, but one thing that I will say Jason Christ have done well during this Olympic qualifier is that he's been doing decently with some of his substitution, and in this game it really shows the case with him switching up the midfield and realizing the midfield was that he has to start, that was in the starting 11 was just not working at all, so he kind of changed it up a little bit, and it basically showed the result. I mean, we've seen before that there are some coaches, they might be a little bit naive in terms of their substitution, and they might feel like even if the midfield is not working, they're just going to continue to hope that eventually it will get work, and by the time when they feel like, oh yeah, it seemed like it's just not working at all, and now we're going to bring in the sub, it's just a little bit, by then it's just way too late, and usually not enough time for those subs to make some impact changes. But just 8 minutes later, Hassani Dotson would score again from Georgi Mihailovic. I mean, pretty much almost the same sequence where Mihailovic provides a good ball from Hassani Dotson, who puts it away to make it 3-0 in favor of the U.S. The Dominican Republic definitely looked like they were gassed, and I think that was also another big part of why the U.S. really opened the floodgates, because when the Dominican Republic, knowing the fact that they have been so resolute defending throughout this game, as soon as you gave up that first goal and also started to give up that second goal, that really took a lot out of them, and that's when you kind of feel like they knew that most likely they're going to get blown away, and started to also look like they're absolute gas. And then in the 90th minute, Georgi Mihailovic, who of course got the two helper early in the second half, well, not really early in the second half, but just a couple minutes after him and Hassani Dotson came into this game, he decided that he wants to be on the goal scoring sheet. So he scores from Benji Michel and Dotson to make it 4-0 in favor of the U.S. There was a kind of a bit of a hold your breath moment for U.S. fans when there was a collision late between Mihailovic and Guzman. Mihailovic trying to get there before Guzman basically come off his lines, and maybe Mihailovic would score his second and also make it 5-0 for the U.S. But unfortunately, both of them actually kind of collide with each other. Thankfully, both of them was able to get up after a couple of minutes of treatment, and I guess that was just an instant where both players just kind of collide with each other, kind of took the win out of their sail, but eventually both of them are back up their feet. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the final action of this game, and also the final score, with the U.S. winning 4-0 against Dominican Republic. Again, unfortunately, I'm unable to provide the stats of this game, and pretty much throughout my remaining Olympic qualifier, I'm not going to be able to provide the stats for you guys, because CONCACAF, they do a really terrible job in terms of covering the Olympic qualifier, and that they don't provide the stats whatsoever. And for those of you might think, well, why don't I just go to Google to basically look at the stats? Well, I did do that in that last game against Costa Rica, and when I look at the stats that they put, yeah, it definitely didn't look correct whatsoever, and that if I did provide the stats again from Google, you probably see the numbers is probably going to be a little bit inaccurate. But either way, I think if you want to look at the stats in general, obviously the US is probably going to dominate every category of that, but they didn't really kind of dominate in terms of the shots and the shots on goal category until the latter part of the second half, because again, for the first 60 minutes, it was a very frustrating game to watch if you are a US fan, with seeing this team just, for whatever reason, cannot break down a Dominican Republic team who, is making their first ever appearance in this Olympic qualifier, and are kind of just happy the fact that they're in here, rather than the fact that they're looking to try to get some points so that they can qualify into the semifinal. But overall, as I said before, this win, even though it was a convincing win, there's still going to be a lot of doubts of how this team is going to perform. And it's also going to be interesting to see later tonight when Mexico does play against Costa Rica. If Mexico is able to get a draw or a win against Costa Rica, the U.S. will qualify into the next round. And then in that game against Mexico versus U.S., which will take place on Wednesday, you wonder now, I said said before how that game was kind of like the litmus test for the US, but if you think more about it, you know, in a game where as prestige as that game is, do Jason Christ decide to once again start a strong lineup, knowing the fact that after that game in just a couple of days, it's going to be probably even a more important game in the semifinal where the US have to win that game in order to qualify into the Olympics. So he decided to take more priority in terms of that game compared to the US versus Mexico game, which, as I said before, it was kind of maybe be a litmus test of how good this US U23 team is, but knowing how after tonight's resort and how things will play out, maybe that game might not be a litmus test, and maybe that game is just one for the US to kind of prepare for a bigger challenge heading into the semifinal. And also, I know people say before for the fact that is there any benefit of finish top in the group in this CONCACAF Olympic qualifier? I mean, I don't think so. When you look at how the other group and how most likely when I look at the other group of the fact that maybe Honduras and Canada is going to be the two teams that is qualifying. Well, if you would have asked me who the U.S. want to face between Honduras and Canada in the semifinal, if they of course move on into the next round, I really couldn't give you an answer because I think both of those teams are really good, and especially Honduras. You know, this was the team that knocked out the U.S. in the semifinal the last time in the Olympic qualifier. That's probably not going to be an easy opponent. And then also Canada, we know what Canada did in that game. I think, oh god, I forgot who exactly they were playing. I think they were playing against Haiti, but you know, we saw how good they look, and especially how good Tajon Buchanan looked in that game. You definitely are not wanted the US to play against Canada, especially how this defense have shown in this first two games that there are definitely some vulnerability, despite the fact that they haven't conceded a goal so far in these first two games. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Again, I know this was a relatively long review, but I kind of also not only want to talk about this game, but also talk about some of these future games that the US are going to be playing in the Olympic qualifier, because, you know, these next couple of games is going to determine whether or not if the US are going to be going to the Olympics or not, and especially the next game is probably the biggest game for the US in the Olympic qualifier. Well, one of the biggest game that is in the Olympic qual, that is US versus Mexico. It's going to be interesting to see how that is going to play out, and whether or not if there's actually going to be something that's going to be on the line for that next game against Mexico. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this game. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.